I want to welcome everyone. My name is Bob Long. I'm president of the University of North Texas at Dallas. And on behalf of our university community, we're honored to be part of this discussion this evening about Aldefa Callejo. I knew Aldefa for more than 30 years, and it was an honor and privilege to be around her. I learned from her. Sometimes she made me feel very uncomfortable, and I learned from that. And she was a monumental figure in the life and history of the city. I just wanted to provide one anecdote that I remember very fondly. In the early 90s, the American Society of Newspapers asked me to take over the minorities committee of AS&E, and the goal of that committee was to continue to diversify Americans' newsrooms. The country was diversifying much faster than the media were, and Aldefa was, let's put it this way, all over it. I remember having lunch with her, and I was telling her about this opportunity that I had. And she quizzed me. She asked me, history of the committee and who was involved in the committee. And she said, you told me about these job fairs that you're sponsoring, and where might those be this year? And I said, well, one is at Howard University, one is at Florida A&M, and one is at Grambling. She said, I don't believe any of those universities are all fine universities. I don't believe any of those universities are majority Latino universities. Well, Ms. Callejo, let me see what I can do about that. So I literally came back from the lunch, and I called my friends at UTEP, and I said, let's organize a job fair, an AS&E job fair at UTEP. And I called Cal State Fullerton and got the Chicano News Association involved. And so Aldefa had this way about her to affect change in big ways and little ways. And for the first time in the history of AS&E, we expanded to Hispanic majority universities as well. And it led to a much larger influx of Latino reporters in our newsroom. She had a huge effect in so many areas of life in the city, and her devotion to social justice was probably unparalleled. And as I said, it was just an honor and privilege to have known her and Bill, visit her law office over on the frontage road near Knox Street. And so I'm so glad that we organized this. Those who did it, I thank you. It's wonderful to have the statue out front of the building, and we'll never forget her. So with that, I'd like to, again, thanks to the organizers and ask Dean Epps to introduce the panel.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Felicia Epps, and it's my honor to serve as Dean of the UNT Dallas College of Law, and to be here this evening to welcome you on behalf of the College of Law, our students, our faculty. And I have to say, I am so excited because we're able to do an in-person event. You do not know how long it has been and how empty this building has felt without being able to do these types of events. And that we are doing something so important as acknowledging Aldefa Callejo. Now, I've only been in Dallas for 3 years, so I didn't have the honor of knowing her, but I have been inspired by her. I was in my office, which is at the opposite side of this hallway, and I have the best view in the building. I had these two wonderful windows, and I looked out one day, and there was this fabulous statute. And I had heard Professor Watley, and I had also talked with some visitors to our law school. I'm trying to remember your name as I'm looking there, but I remember us talking about that, JD, talking about that very statute. And I said, it's there finally at last. So it inspired me. I got up out of my chair really, or left my office and immediately went down to look closely at it. And I did see the distinctive flower on the lapel, which I'm told was not quite big enough because it used to be a little bit bigger. But it's just absolutely an awesome statute and a tribute to a awesome woman who I look forward to hearing about this evening. So I'm not going to say much more other than to introduce our moderators for this evening. Amanda Gaddison, who is the president of the UNT Dallas College of Law Alumni Association. And I have to tell you that Amanda sought me out and made an appointment to tell me she wanted to volunteer for this role. So I'm quite thankful for her taking that on. Amanda is part of the commercial real estate team at Condon Tobin. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree in communications from the University of Texas at Tyler, where she was a multi-sport athlete in volleyball and basketball. I did not know that. While attending the UNT Dallas College of Law, Amanda was appointed by Governor Greg Abbott to serve as a student regent to the UNT Board of Regents. And she also survived me as a professor in the class that she took. She is a member of the Dallas Bar Association and the Dallas Women Lawyers Association, and serves as the mentoring chair of J.L. Turner Association. She is dedicated to community service, volunteering with Enquist Therapeutic Horsemanship and the Dallas Volunteer Attorney Program. And she loves her family and friends dearly, and I would say also her alma mater, the UNT Dallas College of Law, she loves dearly as well. So Amanda is one of our moderators for this evening. And then Adriana Fierro Rascon, a 3L and president of the Hispanic Law Students Association. Adriana is the mother of 2 boys, a 4-year-old Julian and a 3-year-old Adrian. So it's amazing. She's also an awesome law student in addition to handling those responsibilities. In addition to being an honor student, Adriana is on her 2nd term as president of the Hispanic Law Student Association. She serves on the Student Bar Association Judicial Board and Law Review, and serves as the student ambassador for the Immigrant Rights Advocates Community Engagement Program. This year, Adriana received the Mexican American Bar Association of Dallas Rising Star Award. Adriana is dedicated to serving her community through volunteer activities and Catholic Charities of Dallas and the North Texas Dream Team. Please welcome Amanda Gaddison and Adriana Fierro Rascon, your moderators.
Thank you, Dean Epps. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. As Dean Epps said, I proudly serve as the president of this alumni association. I am so proud of my law school and proud to be an attorney. It is also an honor, as President Long said, to be here and serve on this panel for such a legacy as Ms. Callejo. So it's my honor to introduce one of our accomplished professors at UNT, Professor Sheryl Watley. Professor Sheryl Watley joined the inaugural faculty of the UNT Dallas College of Law from the University of Oklahoma College of Law, where she served on the faculty from 2006 through 2013 and was the professor of law and director of clinical education. Professor Watley teaches criminal law in the first-year curriculum. She also teaches the upper-level courses, the trial process, and courtroom advocacy here at UNT Dallas College of Law. Professor Watley serves as the director of experiential education, overseeing the law school's externship program, the community lawyering centers, the Joyce Ann Brown Innocence Clinic, and the law school's community engagement program. Please welcome Professor Sheryl Watley.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out today. Pleasure panelists. Today, I'm going to be introducing John David J.P. Gonzalez. He is the nephew of Aldefa Callejo. He is a native of Dallas, Texas, and a graduate of Jesuit College Prep, SMU, and Texas Southern University School of Law. He is a member of the International Council of Shopping Centers, National Association of Realtors, National Board of Realtors, Texas Association of Realtors, and the Greater Dallas Association of Realtors. JD has also served as the past president of Dallas Jesuit Alumni Association. He's the past chairman of the Dallas Morning News Tax Scholarship Committee. He's a graduate of the Leadership of Dallas, past chairman of National Hispanic Education Foundation, past board member of Ronald McDonald House, and a past trustee of UTA Advisory Board for the Center of SW Studies in Cartography. Please welcome JD Gonzalez. Our next panelist is Monica Lira Bravo. She currently serves on the Dallas County Community College Board of Trustees, representing District 4. An East Dallas native, she graduated from Hockaday School, Southern Methodist University, and Texas Tech University School of Law. She founded Lira Bravo Law, a successful boutique immigration law firm, and is passionate about helping the next generation obtain the right skills to succeed by obtaining a college degree or trade certificate. She's a board certified attorney in immigration law and represents clients in matters relating to obtaining legal permanent residence and citizenship, obtaining work permits, filing deportation orders, obtaining immigration bonds, and representing before Immigration and Customs Enforcement and USCIS. Please welcome Monica Lira Bravo. So we're going to get started with the questions for our panelists. We do have a hybrid format, and so for everybody on Zoom, feel free to use the chat feature. We'll be monitoring the chat, and also you can unmute yourself, raise your hand, and ask a question that way. And of course, for everybody here live, feel free to jump in and ask some questions as we start. All right, so we're going to start with you, Professor Watley. Can you share your experiences and notable memories of Ms. Callejo?
Yeah, that's an honor. Thank you. I want to, first of all, can I just take a moment and congratulate everybody for putting this together, especially Professor Gabriel Sotelo and our Assistant Director, Miguel Hernandez. This is fabulous. I was a young lawyer, newly come to Dallas in the late 80s when the issue of redistricting and the representation of African Americans and Hispanics on the city council had become a very hot button issue. And I remember being at various meetings because I was just learning. And there was always one woman who walked into a room with presence. Heads would look, there was nothing particularly unusual, but when Aldefa walked in, you knew it was business. You knew that she would have something to say and to contribute, and people would listen. And I used to always wish I could have that dynamic, right? I always wish that, wow, when you walk in, not only do people know you're there, they're glad you're there. They're glad that you're there to lend your voice to whatever the issue is, to whatever the fight is that we're getting ready to take on. All right, so, yeah. And because, you know, she had encyclopedic knowledge of what had gone on and who the players were, and then the ability to strategize, right? How you put together knowledge with, here's the strategy. Here's how we're going to make sure that social justice are always on the forefront and not just put on the back burner because it wasn't convenient. It wasn't time. We had a big issue about redistricting, kind of saying, you know, just wait, do it gradually. Don't impress for 14-1, do 10-4-1, do this, 10, whatever. And it was like, no, we will be the voice and we will. And we brought Black and Brown together. And I think that's what I appreciate most about her.
Monica, do you want to share your experiences and any notable memories?
Sure. So one of the things my bio doesn't include is that I'm currently the chair for the Callejo Boteo Foundation. And so I did not know Aldefa as well as probably my co-panelists, but through my work on the foundation, I've learned just so much more about her. I can share a couple stories from my personal interaction with her. When I grew up in Dallas, this is my hometown. Aldefa Callejo was the first woman lawyer of color that I ever heard of. When I was at SMU undergrad, and I was part of CHAS for SMU people here, which is the College Hispanic American Student Organization. I was helping plan an event, and we were like, hey, why don't we ask Aldefa Callejo to come speak at our event? This was, 20 years ago, so it wasn't not so much technology. And so we just called her office and asked if she would be willing to do that. And instead of saying yes, she said, come to my office and tell me about yourself and tell me what you want me to tell me about this event. And so that was the first time that I think at that time I was probably 18, 19 years old. I went into her law firm. I saw, for any of those of you who've gone to her law firm, I saw all the pictures, all the awards that basically told her story of her career. And at that point, I was thinking about law school, but I wasn't fully convinced yet. And, just seeing how humble she was and sincere and just really wanted to know who I was and, what were we trying to accomplish? And then she came and she spoke. She came and she spoke at our event. And then later on as a lawyer, years later, when I became a lawyer, my first job was with Liz Cedillo Pereira, who Aldefa was her mentor. And Liz quickly became a mentor to me. So as a lawyer, then I got to also see her in action, and because she worked closely with Liz, and so it was pretty neat getting to meet her first as a college student, then as a lawyer, and so then when I was asked to serve on her foundation board and lead the effort with the statute, it's kind of like, this is awesome. I never dreamed that I would be doing this great work.
Thank you. JD, as Aldefa's nephew, what can you tell us about her? What kind of Thea was she?
Aldefa was a phenomenal human being, a phenomenal strategist, and a great attorney. She was equally as much a wonderful and extraordinary aunt. She was full of love, full of joy, full of happiness. When all the major holidays came, she was there with us always. She loved her family al máximo. She adored her community, her language, her culture, her education. She tried to spread those seeds to us and thus, encouraging us, go to school. Education is the great equalizer. She was always promoting education, always promoting generating wealth, always promoting you can do it. I've been around a lot of people in my life, and I can't recall anybody that was more positive, more focused than that woman. She was an extraordinary human being. I was honored to care for her and my uncle in the last 2 years of her life. When she became ill, she called me, you need to come back and back to the building, and we need you to take care of us. And obviously I was glad to do that. One of the things I think, in that 20-month period, there were so many thousands of stories that I learned about her that we had never known before because, we just didn't know. There's so many things going on every day. But that was one thing I can tell you is that she had no fear of death. I've taken 5 relatives in the last 8 years from the beginning to the end. And that person had no fear in her eyes of death. Now, what she did do, she would get upset because she would say, I have no more time left. I'm running out of time. I have to accomplish A, B, C, X, Y, Z. She was frustrated with that, but the fear was not there. And that was something that I'll never forget. One incredible story about the kind of person that she was and committed to her profession and to her clients. About 1.5 years after she passed away, I was at an event and somebody noticed that I had a badge with my name on it and it said Callejo Executor. And this lady walked up to me and said, in my home, your tia es una santa, she's a saint. And she said, I want to tell you a story. And I had never heard this before. She said, my father raised us in West Dallas. We had a home. That's where we lived. And we rented the home. The owner lived in Fort Worth. It was an Anglo gentleman that lived in Fort Worth. So the father made the payments every month on time. One day, The father approached the owner, they had lunch, and he said, I want to buy the house. Some negotiations went on, and 30 years went by. He makes the payments, and on the 30th year, he calls for the deed. And the gentleman tells him, I don't know what you're talking about. And tried to shove it off as he was just making lease payments. The father became upset, and rightly so, and went to see Aldefa. And she said, my father walked into Aldefa's office, and he had written everything on a napkin: the date, the property, the description, all the elements of a contract. And he had the gentleman sign it. And apparently either he had forgotten about it or wanted to forget about it. Aldefa took him to court, sued him, and the house was turned over to this gentleman. I just thought that was a remarkable story. It's a holographic will, those of you that understand the law. And it was just an amazing, amazing story, something that I've never, ever heard before. Just in finishing off here on my side here, another incredible story really addresses her humility. We always see her as a kind of the queen of the dragons, this powerful woman, this powerful force, which she certainly was. She had so much humility and so much humbleness. There is a person in this room sitting here today who knew Aldefa very well, and Aldefa would call her almost on a monthly basis and say, here's $500, here's $300, here's whatever. I want you to go to West Dallas. I want you to buy food for this family. I want you to buy clothes for the family, for the children. And most importantly, I do not want you to disclose that it was me. This went on for 25 or 30 years. I think that's an extraordinary trait of hers that a lot of people are not aware of. Thank you.
Judy, you were quoted in the Dallas Morning News as saying, I hope that what Aldefa stood for and what she did and what she accomplished lives forever. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Aldefa was about education. Education is the great equalizer, was something that she pulled from former Judge John Crusoe, our current DA. She and the judge were very, very close. And Aldefa was very, very pro-education and gave an extraordinary amount of money for scholarships throughout the course of her life. I think Aldefa was looking for fairness, for an even platform. She was looking for education for all people, especially people in her community, in our community. She was looking for, I believe, justice. She saw from Millet, Texas, one side of the cemetery was for the Hispanics and the other side was for the Anglos. And she would tell me and tell us as a family group, even in death, we are discriminated against. We serve our nation. We give our lives and make the ultimate sacrifice. And even in death, we are discriminated against. I think these things, these events that she saw and experienced in her younger years really were the seeds of what fueled her passion and gave her a lot of courage to move forward. She was looking for healthcare, for fairness, for access to healthcare, access to hospitalization, access to education, all these kinds of things that 50, 70 years later, we're still fighting for. So I think that's the best way that I can answer that question. She was looking for an even platform for all of us.
Okay. Professor Watley, you were quoted in the Dallas Morning News as saying that Aldefa Callejo's statue facing the College of Law symbolizes a charge to our law students to never forget that the law degree is about service. What does that mean to you?
As a public law school, the UNT Dallas College of Law has a unique place in the city. I think Aldefa looking at us is a challenge of what are we doing with our law degrees? And more specifically, what are we doing as we teach young people who want to become involved in the practice of law? There are lots of anecdotes about her representation of criminal clients, the story that JD has just shared. But a law degree gives you more than the ability to walk into a courtroom. The law degree gives you the ability to negotiate, to strategize, to be a community leader. And I think that's what that says to us. I know that's what it says to me. When I walk out every evening now, my life has got to be about social justice because it's just pointed out, we're fighting the same fights 50, 70 years later. The redistricting issue of the city of Dallas may be over, but we have a new census. We're going to have redistricting all over and over. Black and brown communities working together affect change. And so to me, her statute is asking us, what are we doing about social justice? Or are we being comfortable in our lives?
Does anybody want to add to that?
To the question of,
About the statute being in front of, the law school, at least for me as a law student, it's very motivating to walk into the building every day. And it's just a reminder of what she stood for. And so I'm humbled that this place was chosen.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about that process if you would like me to.
Yes.
So, as part of the foundation board, Ms. Callejo had decided she wanted a statue of herself when she was still alive. So she was very much took part in the process of selecting the photo that the statue would look like. And so when I joined the board, that had already been decided. So thankfully, I did not have to decide any of that part. But we had the difficult task of deciding where we would put this statue. And so the foundation fundraised for it to donate it. And so we worked closely with the city of Dallas, but we also considered maybe donating it to the county because, we looked at maybe by the courthouse. She was the first Latina lawyer in Dallas. And she was a lawyer, so why not a courthouse? So we talked with the city of Dallas. They own several parks in Dallas. We looked at Belo Park because it was near the federal courthouse, also tied to the law. And then, obviously the Latino Cultural Center was thrown out as an obvious location, also city-owned property. But we knew that we didn't want to limit her to just the Latino community, that we wanted everyone to know about her. Love Field was, remember the newspaper articles? Love Field was a contender for a while. And there we wanted it more for the visibility of the access to the thousands of travelers that are coming into town. But ultimately, when we chose Main Street Garden, one of the reasons why we did that was because of its location and proximity to UNT Dallas. And because we knew that she cared about education. Education is a great equalizer. And we knew that she was supportive of educational institutions, public institutions. And I think if UNT Dallas would have existed when she was going to law school, she would have considered definitely coming here. But we felt that the location in downtown Dallas near the law school was just the perfect location for the statute. And so when and then not just choosing the park, but then we had to actually choose the location in the park where the statute should be placed. And we wanted it as close to the law school as possible because we wanted the future generations of lawyers to know who she was, especially attorneys of color to know the history, right? Because that's part of why we have a statute, is so that people will remember who Aldefa Callejo was, struggles that she went through for our benefit. Because I don't know if I would be sitting here as a Latina lawyer speaking now, doing everything that I'm doing if she hadn't blazed the trail before me.
Just to kind of jump on that, talking about education, Aldefa shared a story with me about 6 months before she passed away, and I'd never heard it before. And I know that some of you in here have heard it because I've shared it prior to this event today. But one of the things that she told me was that when she graduated back in those days, she graduated, I think, in 1961 from SMU. She, in those times before you could take the bar exam, you had to be interviewed by a 3 white male person panel. And you had to answer their questions. And if you didn't get to sit for the bar. And I mean, I thought that was an amazing thing. And she said, let me tell you what happened to me. She said, I'm in the row sitting down, 15 students ahead of me, one after the other, they're going in. And she said, I began to get nervous about what I was going to say, because she said, I'd gone to law school at night for 10 years, undergraduate at SMU for 10 years. I'd made all these sacrifices. I moved from Millet, Texas, and got my parents to move from Millet, Texas to Dallas. And everybody came, the entire family. And we made all these sacrifices. We worked. Bill went to school at night and he worked. And here I was in front of these men and I was afraid that maybe they were going to nuke me. And she got nervous and began to think, well, let me think of something else I can tell them, you know. And then just before she was going to be entering into the room, she decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell them what I feel, what I think, and what I believe. I'm going to tell them who I am and what I am. And that's what I'm going to do, because anything else is going to be misrepresentation and it's not going to be accurate. So she went in there, walked in, sat down, and they began to ask her a series of questions. And as she began to answer the questions, after 7 or 8 minutes, one of the attorneys said, Mrs. Callejo, it sounds like you have a chip on your shoulder. And her response was, that's not a chip on my shoulder, that's a 2x4. And they, you know, as they interviewed her, you know, they asked, well, what are you going to do? She goes, I'm going to fight for women's rights. I'm going to fight for jobs for minorities. I'm going to go to the streets if I have to. I'm going to file lawsuits in federal court because now I know how to do that. I'm going to do whatever it takes to balance the platform for our communities, for women. And with that, the gentleman said, you can go on and take the bar exam. Thank you very much. And the rest is history. You know, it's an amazing thing that, you know, it's an amazing story. I was stunned by that story, you know, and as I spent more time with her, I learned more of these stories. And, you know, I mean, that's a pretty, I was just fascinated by that. I thought it was just incredible story there. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I mean, like Professor Watley said, you know, there's a lot of work to be done still, and we've made a lot of progress. I think she would be very pleased with the progress the law school has made. And we are ranked #1 in diversity for our students. So I think she would be very proud of that. I'm going to pass it off to my co-moderator, Amanda Getson.
We had a couple questions come in on the chat feature and want to start off with you, JD. Someone wants to know, what can we do for our law students and lawyers in general as we face immigration issues today?
Well, I think that the things that we can do would be to invest in our communities. I think it would be very important for there to be a tremendous emphasis by the law schools in this area of immigration. I know that there is, but maybe that's something that needs to be compounded and done more effectively. I think that immigration law has just exploded and expanded, you know, obviously in the last number of years, and it exploded during the era of President Reagan when he was here. I think that immigration is going to be a very hot button issue and a very hot political issue and a very dynamic area of the law as we move forward in our country in the years to come. And really, probably the person that can really address that question more effectively than I would be the lady sitting on my left, who's a fantastic immigration lawyer.
Sure. And I mean, on this question, I appreciate the question because as a Dallas College board member, you know, we serve several students with DACA status and some who do not get the benefit of DACA yet. And we're hoping to get it and now can't. And so I think as, you know, as an institution, what you can do definitely is tell your students that you're there for them, right? And remind them that just because your legal status is in question, you can still pursue a degree and provide outlets for them, provide access to mental health and access and counseling. Because if you know a dreamer or a DACA student, they're not okay right now. Knowing that your life is depending on this 2-year work permit that may or may not be extended, and that there may be a possibility for a green card or citizenship at any point in time. But with the swing of the pendulum and the change in political office in Congress, like their livelihood is going to be changed. So I think providing support and access to counseling is something that can help our students.
Professor Watley, would you like to add anything?
I think that the other thing that we can do is be supportive of our organizations such as the Hispanic Law Students Association and the activities that our students have voluntarily undertaken through the community engagement program, like the work that Adriana has done with Catholic Charities and going out and reaching out to the community and helping with the citizenship applications and refugee status and things like that. I think that the more the school and the student body and the faculty and staff support those efforts and send a message that this is a problem for all of us. And that if we can join our energies and talents to address it, as well as support their desire to participate, I think that way we can lend the supportive shoulder that perhaps our students need.
Right. And I agree. I think Mrs. Callejo's, or I know Mrs. Callejo's legacy is a testimony of what can be done if we respectfully stand for what we believe in. We had another question come in from Roman online. He asked, what would Ms. Callejo challenge us individually and collectively to be doing today if she were on this panel?
Well, I can tell you right now that if she was here today, she would be telling people to vote, register to vote, write letters, get active, be active, get your children active, get involved in voter education, take people to the polls to vote. She would tell people to go to school, to go to college, get your degrees. She used to tell us all the time, you know, everybody who has a degree here, that's great. I've got a nuclear bomb. It's called a law degree. And that's the way she thought. You know, Aldefa thought big. She was not a small thinker. She was a higher order thinker, and that's the way she thought. And, you know, to hell with 3 more years. So what? What's 3 years to a lifetime? She would tell us. Go to law school, get your degree. If you don't want to practice, that's okay. Nobody can take your education away from you. Once you have that degree, once all that is imprinted in your mind, they cannot steal that. They can take your home, they can take your property, they cannot take your education. It is everything. So we were always encouraged, and she encouraged everybody that I ever met or knew her with to go to school and get your degree. She would tell us also, generate wealth, invest. Don't be afraid of the money. Learn about the stock market. Learn about what a 456 is. Learn what a 401k is. Learn how to buy real estate. Learn how to buy rental properties. Learn how to buy shopping centers. Think big. And that's the way, I think those are the things that she would, you know, comment on and tell us. Don't forget to pull the person behind you up. Don't forget that somebody got here on my shoulders and they're going to get further up on your shoulders. Turn around and help those that are less fortunate. Now, I mean, we heard that all the time, and she said that all the time, and those were mantras. And she did a great job with all that.
Monica, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I can think of a couple things. I think that she would be pretty pissed about what's happening at the border with the Haitians.
Oh, yeah.
And she would be saying, why aren't we marching? You know what? Why aren't we protesting? Because it's pretty horrible what's happening right now. And then I think also she would be encouraging our Latinos to run for office, because I think that's one of the things we haven't talked about her legacy. And, you know, when we put up that sign on the statue, but it's going to say also part of that is that she was known as La Madrina, which La Madrina means godmother. And she was given that nickname because when a Latino decided to run for office in the city of Dallas, they knew who they had to talk to. And it was Aldefa, because Aldefa, you know, that expression, you can be a king or you can be a kingmaker. And she chose to be a kingmaker. She chose to support candidates who were running for office and to get them elected. She herself never ran for office because she felt that she would have more power behind the scenes. And if you talk to almost any Latino elected official that has been in power while she was alive, you can guarantee they went through her office.
Yeah, that's true.
Professor Watley.
Yeah, I think the other thing, though, is the Black-Brown Coalition. You know, the 80s and 90s and 2000s, that is what really transformed this city. And clearly, African-American leaders and Latino leaders got together. My personal memory is that I remember just conversations with her, and I'm like, you're talking to me? Like, well, wait a minute, you're this powerful, this powerhouse, this, person who, the kind of the E.F. Hutton of Dallas. When you speak, people listen to you. And yet she would be gracious and, invite your input and thought, like the community meetings. What I think she would say is, what are you doing? What are you doing? Can you articulate for us what your plan is, how you're going to make change, how you're going to support addressing the issues that exist? What, as individuals, I think that she challenged us individually to make our contribution, but then how it would come together as a collective. And that's kind of my takeaway from, and I got to say, our inaugural students did a legal legend of Aldefa Callejo, and they passed these out when they did their video presentation. And so this is supposed to be worn on your lapel in memory of Aldefa.
Monica, a minute ago, you mentioned Ms. Callejo's legacy. If you would start us off with how you would describe her legacy and what you want everybody to know about her and what to be carried on.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many remarkable things about her, but I think one thing that stands out to me is that she didn't go to law school until later in life. She did it, as an older student, and she lived to what age?
90.
To 90.
90.
So, I think she was a lawyer for probably like maybe half of those years. So maybe about 40 plus years. Look at how much she accomplished in that time period. And so, when I'm looking at law students sitting in here, and me myself, who was a lawyer at 25, and it's like, she could do that, in that amount of time. Like, what are we doing? Like, why can't we do more? And I think just knowing her story and knowing all the obstacles she had to overcome, and she was still able to leave the city better than when she arrived here. If we can just do a modicum of what she accomplished, the city would be even greater than what it is right now.
I agree. JD?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I remember those of us that worked with her, on her staff, she, they had no children. So the law was their child. Their practice was their family, if you will. And I remember they would work Saturday night till 7 o'clock or Friday evening till 10 o'clock. 5, 6, 7 days in a row. And this went on for years and years. And I remember telling her one time, I want to go see my kids play soccer. It was a soccer game at 11 o'clock on Saturday. And she said, sit down and go to work. You can go see them when they turn pro. I said, wait a minute. I was like, wait, you don't get it. I got to see them when they're little, Go back to the office, go to work. But anyway, that they were very focused, both of them. And I want to give Bill Callejo a lot of credit here, because we tend to think, well, that's only, let me tell you, they were like this. They were Mutt and Jeff. They were, A and B. They were together in everything. Bill, for most of you that may or may not know, was a licensed attorney, broker, engineer, and lawyer. He was absolutely brilliant. He was a genius. He was intimidating. He could be very caustic and acidic, and he was very much a Renaissance man. She never cooked, ever. He cooked dinner every single night for however many years they were married, almost 60 years. They were like this. Anytime that there was going to be a strategy on anything for an election, things of that nature, the first strategy meeting came with Bill and Aldefa. He was a page at the age of 12 or 13 years old at the New York Assembly. So he already had a lot of experience in this area by watching and learning. So when he came to Texas, or actually he met her in San Francisco, and then they moved back to Texas, when he realized what she could do and what she realized what she could do, they were together as a team and they accomplished a lot. She generated a lot of the heavy revenue, but he was the investor and invested it in real estate. And in real estate, I'm in the real estate business. I'm in the commercial business. I tell you what, Bill Callejo was a genius. He was a master at being able to buy land. He could find the best properties to buy in raw land in 1965. On April the 27th, he bought hundreds of acres from Fox and Jacobs. And he bought the land. And then I said, how did you know which tracts to buy? He said, well, I went to the city of Garland, which back then was one building. He took me to the land and there was nothing but dirt out there. It was just farmland. And so as the years passed, he was sharing a story. He goes, well, I knew which land to buy because I had access to the records. When I went to the records building and opened everything up, I'm an engineer, so I knew where all the heavy infrastructure was going to go. I knew where the drainage was going to go. I knew where the sewer lines were going to go. So from that, I was able to effectively, logically discern where Arapahoe was going to go and where Shiloh Road was going to run north-south. Those were the tracks he bought. And I can tell you today from having sold them myself, he was genius. I shared this story with one of the assistant city managers in Garland, and he was asking me, how did Bill know where to buy these tracks? And I shared that story with him. And I share it with you because Aldefa reached great heights, but she stood on his shoulders, and she got there through him and he got there through her. They went together as a team and everything.
Great. Professor Watley, will you tell us what you hope that everyone takes from Ms. Callejo's legacy?
I think that the thing that you have to take from her legacy is her challenge that we all have an obligation to work to make life better, to even the playing field, to create this sense of fairness. We all are striving for this more perfect union that is embedded in the Constitution, and we can't stop. We can't say we've made progress because we're still not there. And so I think that what I love about that statue is that it symbolizes the power of an individual. She had that drive, she had that mission, and she did it. And without being braggadocious, I think that every one of us has within us the ability, if not to be an Aldefa, to be a little bit like Aldefa. Yeah. And if we were to all make that commitment, if we were to walk out of here today saying, you know what, social justice is high on our agenda, boy, we'd be making a difference in Dallas tomorrow.
Right. And I think you just have to pick one social justice issue to focus on.
Well, they're kind of all interrelated.
Yes, exactly. And they all work together and you move the ball forward. Mm-hmm. But just as all of you have said tonight over and over, that she's encouraged all of you and so many others. Chief Justice Carolyn Wright said on Saturday that Aldefa was one of her encouragers for the Black-Brown Coalition. Mm-hmm. So she's still encouraging people today. JD, you kind of touched on Bill cooking dinner for Ms. Callejo every night, and someone online sent in a question that said, tell us a bit about the love story between Ms. Callejo and Bill.
Well, that's a great question. They were madly in love with each other. And, some of the pictures about that time when she was younger, she looked like a starlet. She was just drop dead gorgeous. She was beautiful. And, we would ask her, what were you looking for in a husband? And she would say, I was looking, for a man with integrity, a man who was educated, a man who took care of his mother and his father and his children. I was looking for a man who was sensitive, and I wanted someone with very high intelligence. And Bill Callejo met every one of those points. And that's why I married him. She said, I knew from the age of 12 or 13 what I wanted in a husband. And when I met that man, I met him in San Francisco. It was Bill Callejo, and we got married. So she was very focused and very, very goals oriented. She knew what she wanted in life, and she knew how to achieve it, and she was going to achieve it. Another thing that I want to kind of backtrack a little bit on Monica and Sheryl is that when we would approach her or we'd talk to her, she gave us a lot of advice in life. And I remember asking her one time, how do you know which side you're going to pick? How do you make decisions on some of these complex or simple issues? She goes, it's easy. I do what's right. Do what's right. She would tell us every human being has something inside them, a compass that tells them this is wrong and this is right. She goes, it's easy. It's not complex. It's not complicated, as we say today. Do what's right. She goes, she would say, Jim Crow was legal, but it wasn't right. Interning the Japanese may have been legal, but it wasn't right. Discrimination in real estate, mortgage lending or the lack thereof, I could go on and on all night, may have been legal, but it wasn't right. Do what's right, and you'll get there eventually. And that was a lot of fuel for her. That fueled her to move forward. If she felt she was doing something that was in the right, there was nobody who was going to get in the way. I mean, I can tell you, you could not tell her no. I tried to tell her no. You could not, you could not tell her no. When she was focused on something, that was the beginning, the middle, and the end of it, and that's just the way it was. So you had to live with that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Turning again to the article in the Dallas Morning News, Professor Watley said that Aldefa Callejo made her impact without a conventional platform. To all of the panelists, can you please tell us about the history and significance of this?
What I was referring to when I made that statement is that we oftentimes think of leaders as elected officials, as people who have some position that empowers them to lead and to guide. Aldefa's power came from her, from her goal setting, from her compass, from her drive. And so she got power, she got respect, she got people listening to her, but without our traditional avenues. And again, to me, that reinforces you don't have to be an elected official. Be the kingmaker instead of the king. I mean, I think that there's again, to me, it brings the message of the individual, right? You don't have to, well, I'm going to do that when I achieve X position and I'm the president of this company. No, you don't have to wait till then. You can start now to have your impact and to push forward the agendas of social justice that you care to address. But
Monica?
Yeah, I mean, I can add that, she was a jack of all trades. She did all kinds. She was a lawyer. I mean, I had to just describe her. I would say not lawyer, I would say advocate, because she sometimes did it with her lawyer tools and in the courtroom, filing lawsuits. But a lot of it was the social justice part of it. And so she was able to do so many things in different platforms. And I mean, I think that she's leaving a legacy for all of us, and, not just Latina lawyers, because I don't think this has been said, but this is the first female statue in the city of Dallas. And we have how many statues in the city? We have a lot of statues. They're all of men. So the fact that we finally have a female statue set across the street, I think it's pretty amazing.
JD?
Well, I mean, I don't know what more I could say about Aldefa. She was a rocket, and she was a giant. I mean, she was a giant. I remember at the age of 15 or 16, talking to her all the time. I knew at a very young age, this was a very, very extraordinary human being. I was mature enough, I think, I hope, to realize that. So I got this box, cardboard box, and I told my mother, give me the morning news every day. And I would search for her articles where she'd call me and say, oh, they interviewed me. I'll be in the paper tomorrow. I'd cut them out. And then one box became 2, and then 2 became 5, and then 5 became 10. And I remember when I went off to law school in 76, I told my mother, I can't take the morning news in Houston, but save the articles. And so they kind of called me the family historian of sorts. But I remember that this was a human being that was just beyond belief, doing so many things, as we've already addressed. She was just phenomenal. And it didn't, she had no fear of whoever she was going to talk to. The good thing about Aldefa is she would never stab you in the back. She would tell you, I'm coming and I'm bringing the hammers with me. Okay? I'm bringing a nuclear bomb with me and I'm coming at the front of you. I'm not coming around the back. That was the coward's way. There was no covarde there. There was no coward in her. She took you one-on-one on, and that's the way and you know what? A lot of people were uncomfortable with that, especially during the 60s and 70s and 80s. And they're still uncomfortable with that. But back then, they were really uncomfortable. She was a trailblazer in that area. She let you know she was coming and she was going to bring hell with her. And that's what she did. And that's how she accomplished so much. She had a lot of courage. She had no fear of any man, any woman, any person, any mission. Give it to me. I'll get it done. He was extremely self-confident, extremely.
Do we have any questions in the audience? Emily Orland, who is an alum from UNT Dallas College of Law.
Monica, could you talk a little bit about Aldefa could you talk a little bit about Aldefa as a mentor? Kind of what would you say to a young female attorney kind of maybe suffering a little bit of imposter syndrome in this kind of today's world?
So yeah, so I mean, like I said, she was not directly my mentor, but because she was my mentor's mentor, I think she would say, yeah, like don't be afraid to do something new or different. Like why would don't question yourself, because I think a lot of times, especially as young lawyers, you think, oh well, I don't know how to do that because you don't know every single little thing about this type of law, right? Like, and I'll talk like as an attorney who has my own firm. Sometimes you're scared of taking cases because you're like, I don't know enough about the law. But somebody like her would say, but you can learn, right? And you can try. And so, I mean, I think she was just fearless. And, I have inherited some of the Callejo memorabilia over the years as foundation chair. Some of them are sitting in my office still. And so I have a big picture of her in my office from some awards she got several years ago. And so on days when I'm having like to decide a bunch of things and I'm struggling with that, I look over at her picture. And that's like motivation, because it's like her face and it's like, she did so much, I can get through this. So, I mean, I think if you know her story and you see, the obstacles she's overcome, I can like, even without like really having had that personal relationship, I know that I can do whatever I need to do. So just don't be afraid to try new things, because I think as young attorneys, a lot of the times we're scared of trying a new type of case, a new type of law, because we don't feel like we know everything, but you can learn it.
Thanks, Emily. If there are no other questions, then on behalf of UNT Dallas College of Law, we want to thank our moderators. You all are generous to give us your time. You all are carrying the torch forward that Ms. Callejo started. I know that you've all accomplished a lot, but JD, just your work in the Hispanic Education Foundation, the Ronald McDonald Foundation, Monica, you being a part of Ms. Callejo's foundation, the work in immigration law, Professor Watley, you being involved with the Innocence Clinic, the Community Lawyering Center, and the Joyce Ann Brown Innocence Clinic. You all are doing your part, and we hope that everyone can follow in your footsteps. We thank you for your time tonight. We'd also like to thank everyone that joined us. We'd like to thank our President Bob Long, for helping put this together and for being here. Professor Gabrielle Sotelo, Interim Assistant Dean of Admissions and Scholarships, Miguel Hernandez, for all of your hard work in putting together this fabulous event. Thank you. Our Hispanic Law Student Association President, Adriana Fierro, and our IT support, Jonathan Brands. Thank you all for coming, and we hope that you join us for another event.
Thank you.